Hello, YouTube, and welcome to another episode of the Bucket List Gamers Mini Reviews. After we had so much fun with the last one, we're back to do another one, and this time we're looking at Ayasa Shadows of Silence by Aya Games, and it's due to come out in 2025, but we don't have an actual release date, but the demo came out on the 22nd of December. We've had it for a little bit longer than that, and we've played through it a couple of times and got to grips with it, and it's very impressive, isn't it? I would say straight out of the gates for an indie developed demo. Very impressive.
Yeah, first and foremost, the first thing that hits you in the face really is the graphics and the graphics engine for what is a completely indie developed title, and this is only its beta test. It is astonishing what they've managed to do with the graphics tech.
It looks. I mean, immediately you said, didn't you? And I was thinking the same thing. It's very much like Little Nightmares,
Yeah.
where you're in a 3D space. I suppose it is, isn't it? It's not 2.5. It is 3D, but it's side scrolling at the same time. So you can go into the background, into the foreground, left, right, climb up, climb down, that kind of thing. And much like Little Nightmares, everything seems bigger than you as well, doesn't it? Even though you're quite in scale with things compared to Little Nightmares, where everything towers above you. Chairs are like absolutely gigantic, and tables. This is a little bit more in proportion, but you still feel like a tiny blip in a massive world.
Yeah.
And the second you start and move to the right of the screen, you start getting chased by some sort of mist that's lashing out hands at you, trying to grab you. And you said immediately, didn't you? It has that anxiety-inducing effect that Little Nightmares does so well.
Yeah, it also reminded me of another game called Bramble the Mountain King. Listeners may be familiar with it, or viewers may be familiar with it. It's again one of those side scrollers. There are boss battles in Bramble that you don't tend to get in things like Limbo, aside from the spider, which isn't really a boss. But yeah, it is that you are an insignificant speck in the world, even the controls, and I wasn't playing it. I was just listening to you go at it with the mouse and keyboard and then revert to pad. But I think even although the controls are a bit floaty, I think they're designed to have that sort of detachment from reality. So everything, it's almost ethereal, a bit dreamlike, where there is that level of these controls are not as responsive as I would like them to be. But I think that just adds to the compounding dread of being chased down by this multi-limbed mist that just
Yeah.
wants to kill you, basically.
Yeah, and I think that it's valid of us to point out at the minute that so we've just played it with me screen sharing for you to see it, and my laptop isn't incompetent in any way at playing games, but because we had our recording software open, because we had Discord open to screen share, and the game itself, it was not chugging, but it was, you could tell that it was struggling just a little bit, couldn't you, to cope with all those things at once. And I don't know if that goes some way to impacting how floaty the controls felt for me. So what I'll do is, if when I play it tomorrow on my gaming PC to record some footage, which you viewers will now be seeing, if it wasn't as floaty and actually that was just because of this laptop, I'll put a little caption on screen now to explain. But like you say, I think it probably has an element of that to make you feel a little bit more helpless in a world where you're already quite helpless to start off with. I mean, we only encountered two enemies, didn't we, in the whole playthrough, and they were both pigs. Well, apart from the mist thing, which we couldn't do anything against. But we couldn't do anything against the pigs either, could we, or boars? I think they were. You are completely helpless, and you have to creep past them to not alert them, or in one instance, keep dodging them until they run into a cage and get locked in, which was a really nice touch, wasn't it? Because the cage thing was hanging off a cliff, and you get the boar to go into it, and then it counterbalances another one that you can stand on, which, again, for a game that I presume is maybe made by one person or a small team, it's mechanics like that and implementations like that you don't always expect to see in games like this.
Even some AAA games get the, or when AAA tries to do indie, which I find incredibly insulting anyway, even they struggle to get not basic mechanics, but just sort of clever puzzle solving. And
Mm.
you happened to just be legging it away from this boar, because we sort of jaunted past this thing, and I was like, oh, that looks like the other place that the boar was. Just carried on walking, and then all of a sudden this boar just tore out of it and just made a beeline for us, and you just sort of ran, jumped on top of this cage, and the boar happened to run into it, and the gate locked behind it, and it created the counterbalance. So it was slightly flukish in the way that it was solved, but again, I can imagine you recognizing that that was a cave with a boar in it, sneaking past it, getting to the puzzle and going, ah, I know what I have to do here. Running
Yeah.
back, making a lot of noise, and then legging it back to sort of solve the puzzle. It just so happened that we completely ignored all the signs and trundled
Yeah.
past it anyway. But yeah, it is incredibly clever, the game as a whole.
And that's, I mean, that's one level which is designed to be a tutorial, I think, because it was giving us little hints and tips, and it
Yeah.
incorporated all the mechanics, didn't it, into the first couple of screens. So you had to jump over a log, you had to crouch under another branch, you had to run and jump across a ravine rather than just jump in, and all those things. It didn't signpost a lot of the things you had to do on the screen very well, but I think that's largely because it's a demo version that's
Yeah.
only just come out. Some of it did flash up, but then there was the first boar we encountered. We just thought the tactic was to run away from it and keep trying to outsmart it, and it didn't work, did it? And then it was only because I said, "Oh, maybe I'll try crouching past it," and that doubles up as a sneak, which we didn't realize at the time. Little bits like that where it probably could have been signposted a bit clearer as to what we needed to do, but I don't think at this stage of development you should take anything away from that. And then the actual visuals of the game were, again, even on my laptop, which was chugging a bit to pop everything in when we first loaded the levels up, it looks beautiful, doesn't it? They, not just the backgrounds, which do look great in themselves, but you notice straight away the lighting effects that were changing as we went across the level.
Yeah, it was constantly in motion, the background. You sort of started out and it was sort of nicely lit, almost a bit fairy like.
Yeah.
Think Lost Woods in Ocarina of Time, sort of nice lighting, that sort of thing. You then set off walking right, and there's this awful thud, and this mist sort of starts clambering after you. You run as fast as you can to the right, manage to outrun and evade it, and then you're in the middle of this really dark, foreboding forest. And as you start walking to your right, the rain starts, and then you get lightning flashes in the background. And then, right towards the end of the demo, you end up on a boat in the middle of a lake or out at sea. And even something as simple as moonlight reflecting off water, a lot of games can't get that right. You can see the moon in the sky, but there's no attempt to make a reflection on the water because of how complicated water moves, and particularly how a reflection moves on water. A lot of games just don't bother, but this game's put so much effort into making it lifelike to the point where, as you sail across, the moon goes behind a rock, and the reflection bleeds out, and then it bleeds back in again as you come back around the other side of the rock. It's just little details like that that build atmosphere and help with world building, and I can't wait to actually see what the rest of the game's like.
Yeah, I mean, we say that's the end of the demo. We think it is. My laptop threw a bit of a fit, didn't it, when we got to that bit,
Yeah.
and stopped working. The game stopped working, but we think that's probably the end of the demo because it was almost a cinematic, wasn't it? But it wasn't. It wasn't like it was a video that cut in, and that's why they managed to get the moonlight looking so nice. It was in-game animation that I just couldn't control at the time. And yeah, the reason that's the furthest we've got so far is because when I've been playing it before, I was getting stuck in various places, which the control pad helped with immensely. I wouldn't advise playing it on a keyboard, even though there is some bits where you have to use the mouse still. I don't know if that's negated on the pad, because by the time I plugged the pad in, we got past that bit, hadn't we? So
Yeah.
it might be that one of the other buttons on the pad does the push mechanism, which is probably the case now, thinking about it. But yeah, it's so much easier on a pad. You've got the controls, and it knew the pad was plugged in, didn't it? Because the prompts on screen changed from key pressers to controller pressers.
And it was instantaneous. You plugged
Mm,
the pad in, and then the instructions on screen instantly changed to no longer press R or whatever. It was hold the right trigger, whatever,
yeah,
to progress. And again, that just shows a level of competency that it genuinely impresses me. And I know in this day and age, it's hard to be impressed by stuff because you can have AI write coding for you and stuff like that. And, you get even indie games who manage to make something look pretty, but usually with pixel art. Whereas
yeah.
this is ridiculously good graphics for an indie project, and it does impress me, and I think it's testament to the game how impressive it is
Yeah,
for just a beta.
this is it. I think it does look, even the way we were viewing it. I mean, you got it on your phone, which was a stream of my screen, which was already struggling a bit to display it properly, and it still looked really nice. So hopefully the gameplay footage that you guys are watching now looks a little bit nicer because I've recorded it on my gaming laptop. But yeah, I think everything about it is, like you say, it's very Little Nightmares. It's very Limbo that you mentioned earlier on, but I would say nicer than Limbo because I don't like the black and white thing. I know it's Limbo's thing, but I
Yeah.
just don't appreciate it as much as a nice, fully coloured game. And I think Little Nightmares is the closest comparison. Probably not as weird and grotesque as Little Nightmares is in its design of other characters, but we don't know because we've not seen what else this game has to offer in terms of enemies. But I'm intrigued straight away. I want to know what this mist is. I want to know who you are and why you're running from it. And yeah, it looks pretty fun. It's going to have 6 lands, it says, in the little blurb that we read, didn't it? Which I assume means 6 expansive levels. I don't know if what we played classes as one, because we sort of went from the forest and it looked like when it crashed we were going to like a beach location, didn't it? So I'm assuming the next one might be sand and beaches and things like that. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be a really good game, and I'm really excited to see the next iteration of it and see what more they develop.
Yeah, definitely. I get the feeling that there will be some bits in it that will push the Little Nightmares envelope.
Yeah,
There were some bits in it that were you fall into a ravine and there's a random Victorian esque pram just tattered and discarded at the bottom of the ravine, and then as you go through the level, there's a discarded old wooden rocking horse just laid on its side. And I don't think it's going to be big on storytelling. I think it's going to be a lot of it is going to be very Dark Souls esque. Infer this from this.
yeah.
This statue obviously means this, and there will probably be entire wikis dedicated to it by the end of the year it comes out of the symbology in this means this, because people just love to sort of hazard a guess at what the author, in inverted commas, meant by certain stereotypes or certain set pieces within the game. But yeah, I think it's going to get twisted. Plus there was a dead elephant at the
Yeah,
edge of a
true.
burning forest section, so yeah, I think it's going to go really weird in some bits.
For me, I'd like to see more threat. I think, other than the 2 boars, we didn't encounter anything. The mist thing, you just have to run away from, don't you? You've no
Yeah.
option. It attacks you at 2 points in the demo we played, and you have no option but to just run and navigate the terrain to get away from it quicker than it can catch you up. I'd like to see more threats than just the 2 boars, which I'm sure there's going to be once you get past this bit. It's a really interesting, fun game, I think, that we've seen so far, and it's my kind of game. Little Nightmares is a game I really enjoy playing, despite the anxiety it presents to me every time I play it. It's much like Little Nightmares as well. It's very generous in that when you die, which we did do quite a lot while we were trying to figure out the controls, you come back a minute before at most, I would say, where you actually were, and you can try it again. So very forgiving with that. I don't know if there'll be more difficulty levels when the full release comes out where it doesn't have that safety net quite as much. But I'm really looking forward to it, and I think you are as well, based on the little bit we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm probably going to struggle to play it on a laptop that doesn't melt into hot slag after the first half hour. But I think if that was released on console, again, consoles would run it quite efficiently, I think, and it's prime candidate for release on console. Obviously, they have to sort of go cap in hand to Microsoft, Sony, and be like, "Ha, do you fancy giving this a launch on your platform?" But I think I will definitely be watching a long playthrough of it just to see if I can't physically play it for myself. I'll either watch you play it, or I
Yeah.
will watch a long play on YouTube once it's come out and get a feel for the story, because I genuinely do think it's one of those that should be of interest to people. It doesn't just. The thing is, with it being Little Nightmares esque, it's not a clone of anything.
Yeah.
Really, it's its own beast. It's got the similar gameplay style, but it's not ripped anything off.
Yeah. I am curious, actually, of just thinking about it, whether it's got, because of how easily the controller integrated into it, I'm wondering if it's got Steam Deck support. So I might see if the demo runs on my Steam Deck and see if that makes it any better. Because if that can't run it, then my other laptop's going to struggle as well. So I might give that a go and just see. Because not all games are. Obviously, it's quite a difficult job to map the controls onto a Steam Deck sometimes because they've got the little touchpads instead of mice, and I don't know why, but some games really don't translate well. But I will give that demo a go on there and see what it says, and yeah, see if it's any better. But I think we best call it there because these mini reviews aren't mini so far. We've done nearly 20 minutes on this one already. But yeah, thank you again for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed the first one, and hopefully you've enjoyed this. We've got plenty more to do in this style, and we're looking at potentially not just covering indie games and potentially looking at some games on our list that we cover in the podcast. If you haven't listened to the podcast and you just stumbled upon this on YouTube, sorry for a start because you won't know what the hell's going on. But also, if you want to check out our Bucket List Gamers podcast, some of the entries in the second book we're looking at, we've already looked in the first. So rather than doing a whole another episode of a podcast on the same thing, we thought it might be fun to get some gameplay footage and talk about it on here instead. So we might end up doing that as well. It's a fun format. I enjoy doing this. I don't know if you feel the same.
Yeah, it's something a bit different to the podcast, to be fair. And it'll give us another string to the bow when we're covering games we've already covered.
Yeah. And I think it's just nice to play these new games as well and get an insight into the development process. So again, thank you very much to Aya Games for sending us a key to play this. And hopefully we'll be able to keep up with it and maybe do another video further down the line when we see where it's developed into. But until next time, I will say that is goodbye from me.
Well, that's goodbye from me.